Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey Success Stories podcast. I'm Jennifer Shuffle, your host, and today I'm with Phil Griffin. He is the co founder and board chair of Trades NKY. Welcome, Phil.
How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. We're very blessed to have you today. Now, for those who are tuning in, if this is the first time to the show, make sure that you like and subscribe because you want to get notifications every time we have a new conversation drop, just like this one. But today, Phil's going to be talking about Trades NKY, the journey that he undertook in order to get to the place where we are today in this journey, and really to talk about some of those challenges, but bigger opportunities for not just Trades NKY, but for our community and even the industry. So, with that being said, I'm going to flip it over to Phil and let him tell us about himself and a little bit about Trades NKY, but more importantly, what was that journey like in order to get to where we are today?
Well, definitely a long one. It's interesting, I look back now and I'm 42 years old and living a life in construction and school and education and raising kids. But I think about, I often think to myself, how did I end up on this journey? And truthfully, it was like 42 years in the making, or at least a good 35 of them. So it's kind of like looking back over my whole life and thinking about all the things that I experienced and have happened and how that kind of led me to some of what we're doing today. So it's been a lifelong journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Phil, let's start with what is Trades NKY, and then we'll go into how did this really cool nonprofit come about?
Yeah. So Trades NKY is a nonprofit here in Northern Kentucky, and it consists of, a lot of different stakeholders in our community, from educators to local businesses. But really, it's all about our youth and the young people, and how do we help give them direction at an early age and give them a lot of different pathways and options to choose from. Um, Being in construction, I've seen where years ago a lot of young guys made their way into the trades, and we've seen over the last decade or so where people have poured out of the trades, and that kind of ties back to experiences that I had early on in education, where it wasn't really the path to take. A lot of us, in my generation, were told, go to school, get your education, go to college, and find a good job. And so now we see, um, you know, a major shortage, and we're seeing a major turn of the tide where everybody's looking at this situation and saying, we need workforce, we need people, and our, these are really great jobs now. So Trades NKY is there to connect all the stakeholders, but really with emphasis on how do we help our young people, our future generation succeed. And that's, I think, the core of our focus is, if we can help our young people succeed, then the rising tide floats all ships. And so our communities are going to succeed, our employers are going to, everybody else wins if we can focus on our youth.
Yeah. So, Trades NKY is an amazing nonprofit that is getting distilled into our schools here in Northern Kentucky because we unfortunately have said for so long, for too long, everybody has to go to college. Well, that might not be everybody's path. And so, I am married to an electrician. And so my dad was an iron worker and also worked out in the warehouse most of the time. So having the trades be a part of the backbone of our region is huge because all of our trade people are unfortunately retiring. So Trades NKY is really linking all that together, and there is this huge turn. So how did all of this come about, Phil, where you guys were like, we are going to do something about this? What happened? What was that turning point?
Well, for For us, I think it goes back in the construction industry. We really started to feel and see this probably in 2008. And I know nowadays we talk about workforce challenges in all different sectors, but
Yeah.
when 2008 hit and the economy really came to a halt, a lot of your older tradespeople retired at that point or went on and took other jobs when construction dried up. So for me, I felt like we've noticed an impact for going on 15 years plus. But then again, it's kind of like we keep hitting it. So in COVID and now we are at that point where it's the workforce is aging out, and there are tons of jobs, high paying jobs that are a necessity to our communities. And so I think for myself and the other co-founder Brandon, we own construction companies here in Northern Kentucky, and we spent years spending a lot of dollars and resource saying, "Hey, there's an issue here, and we really need to fix it." Um, and just knowing that like there wasn't really a pathway or a pipeline that was built out in a way that would expedite the process. So several years ago, we were both kind of working on it in different directions. We happened to be neighbors, and we caught wind of what the other one was doing, and we sat down on the porch at the house one night, and myself and Brandon and his wife sat there and talked for hours and said, "Okay, you know, we need to do something. Let's just go all in and let's combine our resources and our knowledge and experience, and let's try to figure out how do we do this." So one of the interesting things there we identified early on, like to really build this pipeline, we need to start really early. And so it became how do we do this, as early as middle school? And so, the funny thing is too, like in the early days, we thought, do we have to convince schools? Do we have to convince parents? Do we have to convince everybody that these are great opportunities and this is a great path? But honestly, like here in Campbell County, it was just the perfect situation. We had a school district that was very innovative. They had done amazing work with their pathways. And when we brought it to them, they were just like, yes, they had already had some things going on in the high school we had an area technology center. And so we just started working and building partnerships and got busy building out the pathways.
Yeah. It's really remarkable because the way that it's really taking off, it's like wildfire. So talk about, because it's not like this is something that was dreamt up yesterday, although people are just now starting to hear about it, which isn't that interesting how that always happens. It's not a success overnight. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into a passion project. So talk about where we are today, but then the expansion and where we're going and what does this look like?
Yeah, well, you're right. Right now, it's really taken off. Where we are today is uh, pretty amazing. And even though it has been 4 years, it seems like yesterday. Before I talk about where we're going, I do want to kind of step back and talk about, when we started that middle school. Um,
Mm.
and this just goes to show how important these things are. But when we first decided that in order to build this pathway, we needed to start as early as possible. And we knew that we wanted to start in the sixth through eighth, knowing that we could always go back to K through 5 and produce experiences for kids and kind of, build the momentum. But we knew, and this probably ties back to my experience in school, that I just wasn't really engaged by about middle school. From about sixth to eighth grade on, um, I just started becoming less and less engaged in the school process. So we started there, and our first idea was, let's go out and buy a curriculum that we can implement into the pathway at school.
Mm.
And we actually spent about a year searching all over the country, and there was nothing that existed at that time. So one of our first challenges was, in order to build out a pathway, we had to have curriculum. that could be taught in the schools. And so when we couldn't find one that existed, that became the first mission. So we built out a curriculum in partnership with our local Campbell County school. And that took a couple years as we implemented and beta tested that in the school. So we've gotten that done. We had a 6th through 8th grade program. The school loved it, parents loved it, but the most exciting part is just watching the kids and how engaged they are in it, and how many kids sign up for that class because they just love the opportunity to be hands-on and have those experiences. But so after that, we had some local folks in economic development that caught wind of it. Lee Kroom at BNKY called us up one day and said, "Hey, we hear great things about this pathway that you guys are building with Campbell County. How could we bring that to the whole region here, Boone,
Mm-hmm.
Kenton, and Campbell County?" And so we had a few meetings with Lee Kroom and BNKY, and he just became a quick supporter of this and said, "We want to support you. We want to see this happen." He represents a lot of the manufacturers in the industry or here in the region. So they became one of our early on partners, and then Spirit of Construction as well became an early partner to this, and they started really pushing us to move faster because we were kind of just, let's get it done, let's perfect this in one school, and then all of a sudden it's how do you bring it to 3 counties. So last year we took on our second school, which was Holmes Middle School. And I just commend them because they were just so eager to provide the opportunities for their young kids. And it was 3 weeks before school started. We had a meeting. We told them what it was and, showed them the curriculum. And I get a call like 2 or 3 days later from the principal down there. And he said, "Can we roll this out in 3 weeks?" And so we rolled it out with 600 kids. And about a 2-week notice last year with Holmes. So that was our
Whoa.
second school, and it's went really well. Same experience. Kids love it. Very engaged in it. And now we are transitioning this year to 9 schools within Northern Kentucky. So the idea is, or the goal is, to be able to offer it to all Boone, Kenton, and Campbell between the 26-27 and 27-28 school year. And that's the build pathway. Most recently, we just announced another partnership, which is the make pathway, which is for the advanced manufacturing and automation and engineering. So, early on, we were focused on building pathways to build pipelines, and it was always, how do we as industry come alongside of the school? Right. We put a lot on our schools. We asked them to do so much when it comes to our young people. And we felt like that's where our young people are. We have to go where they are and work within the system that exists. So the whole idea was to bring industry and support and resources to our education system and to our schools so that, when these kids leave, they're career ready. They're ready to step into these careers and grow and advance from there. And so early on, we said, once we understood the pathway, we understood how to build these curriculums into the pathway. We said this really would work for all types of skilled trades. When we would say skilled trades, because Brandon and I come from the construction industry, they just thought builders, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, welders. And we kept saying, no, skilled trades is much bigger than that. You've got advanced manufacturing and just all these different sectors out there that you may go to college or you may not go to college. You may go straight to the career and back to college. So we kept asking ourselves, how do we get people to understand that we're talking about more than just construction? And we were thinking back to COVID when everything got shut down, and we really used the term a lot, the essential workforce, right? I think that opened up everybody's eyes to how important all these essential jobs are.
Yeah.
And so we're really trying to convey that this, there are a lot of jobs and opportunities out here in our communities that are just skilled trades. You could even argue healthcare and teaching; those are skilled trades. So we came up kind of thinking through the COVID era and the essential workforce, essential worker. Um, we came up with 5 pillars, which we call the build, make, move, power, protect. So build
Yeah.
being all your construction, the make is your advanced manufacturing and automation, robotics, engineering. Move is like supply chain, logistics. And the funny thing is those three operate uh, in partnership every day. In the industry, we're all tied together. And
Yes.
then power was, your utility companies and things like that. And then protect, um, is everything. I mean, it's amazing from fire services to IT to you could even throw healthcare in that. So the idea was we want to have really from kindergarten to career, post secondary, all of that, have a pipeline built for all of these opportunities. And that's kind of where we're at now. We've just announced our second pathway with the manufacturers. Um, and it's awesome watching all of them join in. And so, it's right now, there's a lot of people in the industry that have joined in with time, talent, and treasure, and all understand the importance of giving kids opportunities to get to these high paying careers and great jobs. And again, if we do that right, then our communities thrive. So
Absolutely. Well, and the workforce is happier too because they're doing what they want to do, not what they're told or the societal norms that they're being forced to do. So it's really amazing to stop and think about what you guys are doing. So, where do you see everything 5 years from now? 5 years goes by so fast. I should probably ask 10, but 5 years.
well, in 5 years, I see kids coming into the workforce that have been doing this from middle school on. And so I just see, an expedited path of skilled
Mhm.
workers. Um, but I see education changing. When we started this, our whole goal was to come alongside educators and let them know that we are a partner. That we understand they have a lot to do and they need help with these things, especially when it gets outside of the normal box of education that's existed for years. But I said, when I would talk to the workforce people, I said, really, this is kind of education reform, but we'll never say that because that could be perceived very negatively or as if education isn't doing something right. And that's not the case. And so, but now we talk about that a lot because the educators in the room say this is education reform. So in 5 years, I just see the entire school experience changing. I see, there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of red tape and things that need to be removed for our educators, but they're so excited. Like they get it. They understand that, to your point, some students want to do different things. And so in 5 years, I see a pipeline in Northern Kentucky that, kids have opportunities to become anything they want to become. And they see a path to do that. And I think it's pretty cool to know that, right here in Northern Kentucky and Boone, Kenton, and Campbell, like we're doing something that will benefit far beyond our community to the entire state. In fact, we've had people in Cincinnati recently ask, can we bring this program over there? So it's really cool to see our community behind it. Everybody supporting it. It's, like I said, it's parents, it's students, it's educators, it's industry. It's also local government. That's been a huge help to all this. We've had local government and even state legislators that have thrown a lot of support at us. And so it's awesome to see everybody working together towards solutions instead of just complaining and about what can't be done or what's not happening. So
Yes. I think that's almost what I love more about it. It's let's stop complaining about this and start solving the issue. Are we going to get it right the first time? No. But we'll change, finesse, reposition, reroute, like we'll figure it out. And that's the beauty of it. So, Phil, this is something we haven't talked about yet, but what does this mean to you personally in really working through this and creating this new structure instead of everybody's got to go to college and really to finesse our great tradespeople?
For me, it hits home. So as a little kid, I remember 3, 4 years old wanting to be a garbage man. The first time I heard the garbage truck roll by on the street, just the air brakes, the noises, the sounds. Um, it's just being a little kid thinking, I want to be a garbage man when I grow up. And how
Mhm.
cool of a job would that be too? By the time I was probably 7 or 8 years old, my dad worked in construction, and I got to have really cool experiences. As a kid, I would build tree houses and play with all his tools and throw them all over the yard and leave them out and get yelled at. But then, you know, early on, I had the opportunity to go into old uh, homes and things that they were restoring and tear out walls and, take sledgehammers to the plaster and, tear up floors. And so just, I was fortunate to have early exposure and I really loved it. And um, I knew these older guys that were landlords that owned real estate and owned property. And I just remember like probably third or fourth grade, like thinking, man, I just want to get into construction and own real estate and do these things. And I know people are like, that's crazy. You couldn't be thinking that at that young, but like I really did. I loved it. But it's because I had exposure to it. But at the same time, uh, I struggled in school. I wasn't. I could do well. I was pretty smart when it came to testing things, but I just didn't sit in my seat very well. And so, as I got older, as I got towards middle school, like school got really hard. It was a challenge, and I was miserable. My mom was miserable because she would get all the calls from the teachers, and I just know that by the time I went into seventh grade, I kind of knew I was done with school. And so like we talk a lot about the disengaged uh younger people out there. That was me. I was disengaged, and once I disengaged from school, I disengaged from sports and all of those things that we're supposed to be doing as kids that we're told we're supposed to be doing as kids. And that kind of led down a bad path for me. So about seventh grade, I think I spent more days suspended than I was actually in school. um, there were a lot of things that came into my life that were, it took years to overcome. And so, I spent a lot of time using drugs and doing a lot of partying. And I had quite a few arrests. And then, I just remember like I dropped out of high school at 16. I was in juvenile detention. I always joke with our judge exec, who's been an amazing supporter and friend. But I always joke with him that I got my GED at his school here in Campbell County, Kentucky, down at the Juvenile Detention Center. Um, and I left after that and I went to work.
Yeah.
My first job at 16 was commercial hod carrier. I did that for about a year, and then I went and did framing for about a year. Um, and then at 18, I was free and I went and got my real estate license and I got into construction and I started kind of chasing this dream that I had at 8 years old to do construction and own real estate. And nobody was telling me I couldn't anymore. But I also had a lot of baggage from those previous years. And so
Yeah.
while I was trying to do good things, that caught up with me. Anybody that knows me knows my story. At 21 years old, I was found myself back in jail facing 30 years in prison. Um, and that's when I got saved and in a jail cell. And my whole life changed from that point on. So thank God I was spared of actually doing 30 years. I was very fortunate to only have to do 6 months on some, I wouldn't say technicalities, but just on how the legal system played out. more the grace of God, I believe. But from that moment on, everything changed. I put down the old habits and the old life very quickly. Started hanging out with older people. I moved out of the city, and changed people, places, and things. And the next, ironically, I was 21 when that happened, but I was 25 when I finally had to serve my 6 months. So I kept working, kept buying real estate, kept building a construction company, kept upgrading my mentors around me. And at 25 years old, I did 6 months in jail. And then I came out, and that was around 2008 when everything was crashing. And that's when I started building AnyWeather, the construction company that I own today. Um, but from that moment on, like life, just like I got a second chance that a lot of my friends and a lot of other people around me didn't get. And I just always felt that I have to now go and take that blessing and pay that forward. So for me, it's been a journey of how do I help somebody else uh, maybe not go down the same path. And so I say all that, like when you say it's, the personal aspect to this, and I'm not saying that had these systems been around, like that was my only struggle, or that I wouldn't have ended up in there were other circumstances in my life that helped me down that path. Um, but I just think, like, how important is it for us to just keep people engaged, show them opportunity, give them hope. And so I think this is something that gives a lot of young people hope, and they can see themselves, beyond their circumstances. So for me, it's just an awesome opportunity to try to help as many young people, um, either A, avoid some of the paths I went down, or B,
Mhm.
know that it's never too late. So
Yeah.
that's the exciting part for me.
It's such a beautiful place to be able to look back and see all the adversity and the perseverance that you had overcome and just continue to do even still today. And I will say one of the big things that we also coach is if you don't like where you're at today, get a new environment. You turn out to be like the top 5 people that you are. If you don't like where you are today, maybe you need a new group, a new tribe to kind of get you to a whole nother place and to change that environment. So that's really powerful that you kind of were sink and swim, figure it out, but you figured it out.
Yeah, I don't know if I figured it out or just been very blessed. My kids give me a hard time because I tell them show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And they tell me I give them too many life lessons. But yeah, that's absolute. And, there's a lot of young people out there that they don't get to choose the environment that they're living in. And I think that, when I look at like that,
Mhm.
what our schools play that role in, developing our young people in a lot of cases. And, they almost have to be the environment, the only good environment around our young people. And so to me, like, the schools need a village around them, and to provide all of that for our young people, because not everybody has it. And so, I've seen people with far worse circumstances than me. And, so that's how do we build the village around that? And how do we do that in our communities in partnership with one another to just try to reach as many young people as we can?
When you believe in it so much that you're even on the school board, which I think is just a beautiful thing because a lot of people would rather complain or, oh, let's do this or that, but really just putting themselves in the epicenter to be a part of that and to ensure that there's change. It's really cool. And so for that, I thank you because I've seen it more because I grew up in the blue collar family. But now, as we continue to provide for our family, I mean, Matt's an electrician as well, and all the things that he's overcome. And he wasn't a good student, he hated school. He wanted nothing to do with it. But he was also, and he still is super bright and he's so intelligent. And it's just the mind is a very cool thing. So, how can we harness that?
Yeah, there's
So,
some great talents out here in the
yeah,
trade.
yeah. Brilliant people too. So smart. So, I have a couple of rapid fire questions. I could talk about this all day long because I think it's so cool what you're doing and the big change that you guys are really taking forward. And even implementing the different pillars and really being in that as far as the growth and development. Because when we talk about, we're just now starting to hear about trades NKY, and then we're going to be in 9 schools. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So 5 years from now, it's going to be Cincinnati, like the whole metropolitan region. And who's to say it might be the whole Midwest?
We're going to need a lot bigger village.
I think you'll have many people signing up left and right to help you get there. I have no doubt. All right, so let's do some rapid fire questions. Are you ready, Phil?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. What is the key to success for you?
The key to success. I wish I would have prepared for these questions. I'll say probably the key to my success is just, you got to get back up. You keep going. I think that it's one of our profile of a graduate traits, but resilience, that's something we are teaching to the kids. You know, so often it's easy to get really down over something that didn't go your way and
Mm,
just give up or walk away. And even working with kids and coaching and that's something that always just drives me nuts because everything that goes wrong is just another opportunity to get it right. And so if you can just keep getting back up, you're gonna every time you're gonna come out better off for it. And so I think that's probably my biggest key to success in life has been no matter how many times you get knocked down, you just keep getting back up. So
yeah, you didn't need to prepare. That was awesome. It's perfect. So, what is your one piece of advice to other business owners, nonprofits, those that complain? What advice do you tend to give them?
it might be different based on each one of those, but like to business owners, I mean, problem's not going to fix itself, and I mean, you stand to benefit from the results that from what you put into this. And I think that, I'm seeing a ton of business owners who are willing and have wanted to be able to do these things. So, it's great to see the contributions that all of the local businesses are making. But if they're not, like, truthfully, like, this isn't a 5 year or a 10 year, like, this is going to be a long fix. And you've got AI and all these other things that are now shaping the workforce. And like,
Mhm.
to me, it's, if the economy's bad in business, we know, like, we've got to go out and get more market share. I think that's the same way you have to approach this. Like, if the workforce is short, you've got to go out and get more market share. It's easy to say, well, there's no workforce out there. I've found myself over the last 10 years saying that. And it's like, no, there is. It might be less than what it used to be, but there are great talents out there. But you have to be working and investing in this. And quite frankly, you have to be building your business to be able to handle where it's at. And, so you've got to do your own inventory in your business. You've got to look at what is going to draw. So what do I have to benefit that young person? If you're just sitting around thinking, woe is me and my poor business, like, you're going to be in trouble, especially with this new generation. Like, you got to get out there and show them, it's so cool. We've got 5 kids starting like over the next couple of weeks that have come from our Campbell County ATC. And the cool part is we have like 26-year-old kids, young guys that are like professionals. And so building out that pipeline with your own company, like, it's one thing to bring in an 18-year-old and send them out to work with somebody like me who's 42 and, getting older and less relevant. But just having like the infrastructure, and then also like looking at it and saying, why would that young person come here? Right? What can I do to help that young person to get to where they want to go? Because truthfully, you look at inflation, you look at all these problems, like if you can't help people solve those things, if your company can't be a benefit to them, why should they get up every day and come help you with what you want? And so I think, that would be my call to action to industry is like, we've got to work hard to be able to provide something better for them than what some other industry or sector could do, or some other competitor can do. So if you're not doing that, you're probably in trouble. With Trades NKY, it's great if you invest some time early, going into the schools and showing up for them. Like, they remember that. Our phone rings all the time now with a young person that says, hey, I need a work-based learning opportunity, or I want to do an internship. And quite frankly, if you think they're just going to walk in and produce cash flow into your business, they're not. Like, there's a job that you have to do. You have to be willing to make that investment. I was at an event last week, and this same conversation, and they said, well, as soon as I train them up, they leave. I said, then pay them $5 more an hour than what they're worth. Like, these are challenges we have to face.
Yeah.
The nonprofit side, I think there's so many good intentions out there and well-intended people that are just working really, really hard. I think that, like, from a regional standpoint, all of us working more, collectively could really, really benefit. There's a lot of different services out there, and like different touch points, but the more, I think it's so cool to do this in the schools, to where we're all coming alongside of the schools and saying, oh, there's a gap here. That's how it was with the curriculum, right? There was no curriculum. Okay, we'll build a curriculum. All right, what's next? But the more all of us can work together to identify the shortfalls, the gaps, different areas of expertise we can provide, I think that's a huge benefit from a regional standpoint. So that's all I know.
It's not all you know. You know way more than just that. But is there a book or a podcast that you're reading or listening to right now?
I'm always reading a lot of different books and some of the same books over and over. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts because honestly, my whole day, I've got a phone to my ear.
Makes sense.
There's many, many books. Like I said, I read some of the same books over and over.
What's your absolute favorite?
I can't even say. I've got a library here, a library at home. One that I really loved. I don't know that it's my favorite. Good to great. It depends on what we're talking about. A book that's helped me in business or personal.
It's whatever
One
you
of my
choose.
favorite books is Extreme Ownership by Jocko. And
I
that's
love
Navy
that.
SEAL. It's just so fun to read, but
Yes.
also so meaningful. Like, and I think,
Mhm.
the title kind of says it all: extreme ownership. Like, you got to have extreme ownership in all aspects of your life. That's another great book. Zig Ziglar, Born to Win. I
Cool.
think that I constantly am telling people in this work that we do, like, our approach to young people is really, like, if you've read Born to Win, it's kind of a holistic view to the person. Like, you might have a great career, but if everything else in your life is falling apart, um, you're not in good shape. And so it talks about physical health, mental health, emotional, spiritual, career, finance, for kids, education. But I talk about that a lot, like, and I, especially with partners in schools, like, if we're not reaching young people from that holistic approach, like, we're worried about their academics when the only meal they get today is what's served in the school, or they're dealing with major mental health or physical abuse. Like, we got to meet people where they are. And again, that goes back to that village. Like that's a lot for schools to do.
Yeah,
So if we want to build our young people, we have to be taking a very holistic approach to how we do it. So,
absolutely. So before we get to the very final question of the day, share with our audience how can they get a hold of you, learn more, and how can we help you? Like, what is your ask for everyone in this venture that you're undergoing?
it's funny because every meeting I'm in, people say, "What do you need?" And that's always changing. But um, I would just ask people, where are your time, talent, or treasure? What do you have most to offer? And how do we connect you? That's one of the things we've been doing with trades. For years it was just a couple of us operating here as we were building this all out. Now we're being more intentional with we've got our build committees and our manufacturer committees. And so, plugging in, if you have time and want to join in, that would be great. We're looking to always connect people. If you want to get into schools and use your skills and your talents to work with students, that would be great. Um, but yeah, it's really like if this is something you're passionate about, how can we connect you with the opportunities that are out there? And honestly, it's not just the skilled trades pathways, or we see this whole path like it's about building children. So whether that's, if you've just got time and you want to go read with a kid, there's a lot of organizations out here where you can help a kid be ready for kindergarten. So, you know, I would just say whatever time, talent, treasure you have, there's great organizations that are out there serving alongside our schools every day, just trying to be that resource amongst our young people. So if you want to connect with us, it's easy. We've got the website, Trades NKY. Um, I believe our phone number's posted on there. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm at any weather, but yeah, just either stop and talk to us at one of the events. Tomorrow is one of our big days. We didn't talk about that, um, but we've been talking for several years about a career day, and a real, like, how do we display our region's industry to all these young people that we're telling there's all these great jobs. So tomorrow is the first inaugural skill up day, hosted at Gateway. So we've got over 1,000 kids coming, over almost 50 companies here from Northern Kentucky. So that's an awesome opportunity. But tomorrow will be the first, and I think there'll be a lot of noise coming next week from that. But we'd love for you, whether you're a business or just an individual who wants to help, just reach out and we'll try to help you connect with the work that's being done.
Awesome. So, for the final question, if you had one area that you could just sprinkle a little bit of magic dust on, what would it be?
Oh, I need a lot of magic dust. I think that here in Northern Kentucky, we've got a lot of great things happening.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think in order for this to be highly successful, it goes beyond Northern Kentucky. Like I said, you know, so much of this work needs to be done in education, but we have to continue to evolve the education process for that to happen. So, support all the way down. Here in Northern Kentucky, we need support at the state level, and that's going to involve things like understanding policy changes and how we allocate budgets and things. But more importantly, just we've got to work with our schools and our school systems to allow for these types of, I hear it all the time. We want innovation, we want opportunity, we want all these things to happen. it's only going to happen if we all work together. So I think that it needs to go beyond Northern Kentucky. There's a lot of state level conversations, and there's things that we need to do. Just one example, schools are expected to get kids into work-based learning opportunities, but there is a lot of legal challenges and insurance challenges and things that we have to overcome to get kids out there to be able to experience these things. So that's just one example. So evolving the conversation to more stakeholders and more people who can improve the system would be something that we're going to need.
Awesome. Well, this was a great conversation, Phil. I am so grateful to have you on, but even more so to really educate our area and our region about what's happening, but even more so that there's this great movement that people can really become a part of and be a part of something bigger and better for our youth to really shape our future. And I don't know if you've been told this or not, but the legacy that you're leaving behind is so massive. It'll impact not only your kids, but your kids' kids and everyone around us. So I completely appreciate it. And I thank you for doing all the cool things that you and Brandon are doing.
Well, we thank all of you that have supported us and championed the cause along the way. So it definitely wouldn't have happened or taken off without all the support of everybody in our community. So thank you all.
Very true. So, of course, again, I encourage all of you who tuned in today, if this is your first time to the show, definitely like and subscribe because we want you to get notifications when we have a new show drop, just like this one. So you can really learn about what's going on in our region, but even more so, some of the really cool businesses that are a part of our community and making our community even stronger for tomorrow. So, of course, thanks to everyone who joined us today. And again, special thank you to Phil. We greatly appreciate you and all the cool things that you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.